Now, are we live? Mhm. Are we live, 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 live? Yes, yes, we are live. Shows excellent
Now, are
connection.
we live?
Yes, we are. 1 minute. Yeah, so we are live. Sunday live is on a Monday this time. Uh, and let's just start with a good news for crypto. So Shopify has just added like crypto payments, stablecoin payments into their payment gateway. तो काफी इंटरेस्टिंग न्यूज़ है एंड आई जस्ट वांटेड टू पॉइंट दिस आउट आज के लाइफ से बिल्कुल रिलेटेड नहीं है बट जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ इट कि स्पॉटिफाई कि शॉपिफाई हैज एडेड crypto into their payments. So yeah, it's a good news कि mainstream apps, mainstream internet is accepting crypto as uh, a currency and not just an asset now. So that's quite cool. And yeah, now let's move to the main topic, democracy. पहले तो सबसे पहले क्या हम डेमोक्रेसी में है लाइक द पॉइंट इज गवर्नमेंट्स कंट्रोल अस all the big companies control us. If we talk about the data that's being controlled, if we talk about oil, we talk about natural resources, they are being controlled. So democracy, it, in what sort of democracy are we living in, or it's just for namesake? Let's just start there.
Awesome. I think this is the best place to start actually, because we like to believe that we live in a democracy, but technically speaking, we live in a republic. So, the maximum places we will find this Democratic Republic of India or Democratic Republic of Congo, right? So basically, democracy is an idea that people have participation in decision making, and how we implement that is a concept called republic. तो constitution बनाएंगे, then we have executionary, judiciary, media, fourth pillar, um, and parliament. So republic is how we implement democracy. I believe, and I think it's a fact that we live in republic. Every republic has different level of democracy. जैसे I'm sure there is an index somewhere out there कि which country is more democratic, which is less democratic. So while everyone lives in republic, but every republic structure has different implications. Like कोई ज़्यादा support करेगा for let's say richer people. Some country is great for poor people. Um, so there is a spectrum, but we live in a republic, and democracy is just an idea.
Okay, so starting point, democracy is just an idea, and uh, the point of a republic as well. Republic ko भी if we classify, there are two three types of republics ki मान लो there's one republic that supports the bottom of the pyramid, that's trying to get that pyramid up. So the way they are trying to grow their country is that bottom को अगर grow करेंगे, if the bottom line is at top, is growing every year, there's a economic growth that's happening. And then there's one more kind of republic that support, this is just an economic perspective, मैंने पढ़ा नहीं है ये कहीं. uh, there's one more type of republic that supports the top of the pyramid, makes them ultra rich. Probably this leads to widening the gap as well, but this is the approach they follow for economic growth. अब नाउ द फॉलो अप क्वेश्चन जो मतलब एक डिस्कशन जो मुझे करना है वो ये है कि which kind of republic is good for society in terms of the society breaking. Where does the society break? Does it break when we support the bottom of the pyramid, or does it break when we support the top in terms of economic, just an economic perspective?
Um, I think we need to support both.
Mhm.
Like pyramid, bottom and top both need to be supported. अभी जैसे democracy republic में there is a kind of republic where prime minister is the head of state. There is a kind of republic where president is the head of state. Then there is a concept of federalism where every state get power, and then all of the states का union को हम लोग nation बुला देंगे, जैसे in United States, right?
Yeah.
States are quite powerful. They pass orders um, to prevent president ka rules to get implemented. In India, we don't have that much, like spirit wise. We also call ourselves federal, but there has been rare cases where state can resist. So eventually, I think it's always better if both have power. So center, the top of the pyramid needs to be supported with different things, and bottom of the pyramid needs to be supported with different things. But because the concept of democracy essentially means we need to support everyone.
Hmm.
So if it is about everyone, then rich poor alike. So both need to be supported.
Hmm. Like, if I talk about the second case, जहाँ पर we support the top of the pyramid, and over time we have the economic gap widening. In this case, the end game is usually a civil war, right? If we look at Sri Lanka, for example, corrupt government supporting the top, widening of the economic gap, the bottom of the pyramid could not afford the rise in prices, because if you have more money flowing in the ecosystem, the prices will rise. And uski wajah se, if we entirely kind of look at Sri Lanka's case study,
Mhm.
uh, we saw a civil war happening. That was the end thing, game for them. So, uh, and if we look at supporting the bottom of the pyramid, I don't have an example that's coming in my head where things went haywire.
Socialism.
USSR, yes, socialist
Socialism.
society. So now, if we talk about a mid ground, everyone knows a mid ground will work. What is the mid ground? Is USA the mid ground? Because I don't feel USA is the mid ground at this point.
Um, yeah, like true. Like right now, I think right now the world is more capitalist than
Hmm.
socialist. Um, so we can analyze it in this way: what happens if we support bottom and sacrifice the top? तो उसमें क्या होगा, workers gets all the power, all the rights, and when they get all the power, all the rights, they would want to relax because everyone wants to relax. So if we support bottom of the pyramid, bottom of the pyramid will relax. If we support bottom over the top, then bottom will relax. So फिर there will be less workers, worker turnouts, and all of that will happen. Less production pay, they will want more money, so the consumers will get harassed because matlab, quality of goods will start falling and everything. So this is majorly if we support bottom and sacrifice the top. What if we support the top and sacrifice the bottom? So now the thing will be there will be very less workers left who will be ready to work. Most of the profit will be absorbed by the 1%, which essentially means because what happens is trickle down economics has very little evidence that it works. So generally, what happens is the top 1% doesn't spend locally; they spend internationally. So they don't go to trips to Rishikesh, right? They will go to trip to let's say Malta or
Yes.
Croatia.
Hmm.
So both have different cracks which appears. But if we have to say a balanced society, I think France was a great example. Not the recent France,
Hmm.
but I think up till the 1980s, 1990s, France was a fairly balanced society. The workers were powerful enough, the elite were powerful enough. Um, Apart from that, I think Bhutan is a great example, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
These are the countries where civil wars have never happened. Actually, let's look for countries where with least civil wars. Those are the
Let's
countries
look at
that
this first, the democracy index as well. Uh,
awesome.
so, where does India come? Let's just point at the map. India has a 7.29 score,
Uh,
and the highest score is 9.81. That's Norway.
Norway again, like they don't have
Yes.
civil wars.
हाँ. And बहुत ही interesting चीज है, since 2006 they have showed the spread of uh, democracy, like how democracy has changed over the world in a time lapse. काफी तेज गया ये टाइम लैप्स. They have showed how Russia has changed, how China has changed, how the US has changed from a high score to a lower score over the past how many years?
Countries with
20 years.
least civil war countries में Norway is there, Switzerland is there, Iceland is
Okay.
there,
So
uh,
it's
Japan is
like
there.
a correlation.
Yep. The more democratic you are, which makes sense, right? If everyone is getting valued, then they will not fight each other.
Hmm.
So I think it's very logical that countries with high um, democracy index, like countries which rank higher in democracy index, have
Hmm.
less civil wars. And
It's also
that is a good output of democracy. Why have democracy? To have less civil wars.
and do you think that educated countries have less civil wars? Like
Uh,
and now this is a very interesting argument because innovation for the past 1 decade, for the past 2 decades, has happened in USA, in the Silicon Valley. Innovation that has created value, at least let's just
mhm.
put innovation in that terms, that has created significant economic value, has happened in the USA, right? Uh, and but on the other hand, if we kind of look at the widening of economic gap, that is also seen, that's prevalent in the USA. On the other hand, if we look at the Nordic nations, for example Switzerland, a very educated country, almost everyone works in white collar, there are very less blue collar jobs over there, uh, and they have seen like kind of uh, lesser innovation than the USA, but on the other hand, they are more stable in terms of the economic gap. Like now, this is quite interesting because both countries are educated over here.
True, true. Like एक काम करते हैं. Let's first look
Huh.
at
I'll just share the screen.
okay, I'll share the link. So democracy index, where did you find it? World Bank data.
Democracy index was आपका this
Okay.
one world in data. Yeah.
So can we like so democracy index and Gini index दोनों को can we put together?
Which index?
Gini index. So Gini index basically measures the amount of inequality in the society.
Hmm.
So let's see if democracy actually creates a equal society or not.
Yeah.
Gini index is the economic coefficient, economic parallel of Nakamoto coefficient.
Now, what is Nakamoto coefficient?
How decentralized the network is. So
Hmm.
there's a very good graph. Like Gini index, if you go in image, so it will explain it in one graph.
Yeah. So let's just put it. Okay. Yeah. So we have Slovak Republic. Okay.
I
So
mean,
Guinea index
India is
का
quite low. Nice.
हाँ,
But we don't find where is Norway. Norway is low, not very low, but low. Bhutan is low.
Norway is pretty low. Bhutan is low.
Anything less than 30 we can call low,
Hmm.
and anything more than 40 is very high.
Okay. And how do you measure this index? What does high signify and what does low
Um,
signify?
okay, so okay, I'll show the graph.
Okay.
The easiest way to do that is so if we basically once again I'll show the graph. It's easier to explain in graphs.
Okay.
Okay, I'll also share my screen. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, uh,
I'll stop sharing.
हाँ, इसमें ये नहीं है, ये है, हाँ.
Yes.
So ठीक है, this is the definition. A measure of income distribution across a population expressed as a number between 0 and 1. So that 26 is basically 26%.
Okay.
Cumulative percent of income, cumulative percent of population. So 20% of people own 20% of income. So this is a perfect equality line.
Huh.
And this blue line is once can I just open it in new tab. Uh, yeah. So this blue line signifies 40% of population owns 20% of the resources. So we start with the bottom.
Hmm.
Um, so let's say so 80% of population will own 60% of resources. So this line is basically Lorentz curve,
Hmm.
and the area. Um, so B upon A is the complete area.
Hmm.
B upon A is Gini index. So I'll
Okay,
just
got it.
confirm that. Uh, uh, okay, so this one. Um, One second. The formula was A upon B. Yeah. So this
Okay.
area
Hmm.
upon total area A plus B is the Gini coefficient. So
Hmm.
this is one of the best measures of how decentralized a system is. And if you are
Huh.
putting it on humans, then it's a measure of how democratic the economy is, because it
Hmm.
deals only with income and population.
हाँ, but अगर countries वाला data देखे then democracy index and your Gini index don't go hand in hand.
हाँ, again, wait. So democracy is more about decision making में involvement, and
Okay.
Gini index is more about how well the resources are distributed. So I think we can conclude from this कि decision making में involvement doesn't mean that resources are also distributed equally.
Okay. And on the other side, if we look at our world, that's the digital world, the crypto world,
Uh-huh.
over there, uh, we have this fundamental thesis कि uh, आपका decision making happens on the basis of where uh, basis of if you're putting money where your word is, right? That's how decision making happens. So
That's
oh,
the goal, but
yes,
yeah.
in our world, basically decision making and allocation of resources should go hand in hand if we look at it.
But again, like for this, I think we are having the assumption that everyone has equal amount of desire. I think some people don't have that much desire, so decision making may they will get involved and they will walk away with very less
uh,
because they don't desire a lot.
so it's like this, right? So uh, for example, अभी मुझे मेरे दिमाग में एक सिस्टम आ रहा है. So our concept is कि you can the only way you can be involved in decision making is you should put money where your word is, right? First point, let's clear that up. Second point that we have come to is everyone doesn't have the desire to make the day to day decisions or the important decisions,
Yeah.
and that's why representative form of democracy is working, that we are able to just make decision once in 5 years, once in a tenure, and choose a leader who will keep making decisions for us, choose
Yeah.
a party who will keep making decisions for us, right?
Yeah.
But now we have seen a rise of few people. They're like, okay, individually I'm doing good in life, but my individual decisions are being restricted by the representative leader that has been elected in my constituency, right? So these individual people with power have also gained the desire to make decisions now, right?
Uh-huh.
So एक system ऐसा हो सकता है where in probably you kind of let's just use a terminology, you put in some amount of resources for decision making, you have to allocate it in the start of the tenure. Everyone does this, it's like a tax, right? You put this, and
Uh-huh.
जैसे जैसे decisions आ रही है, on the basis of how much this decision affects you, you burn some amount of this treasury that you made just for decisions. And you can also convince other people who don't have the desire to make decisions to burn some amount of theirs for you. So it becomes uh, a system where the person who has the desire to take decisions can take actions each and every time uh, a decision has to be taken. So it's like instead of having an income tax, you just have this treasury that you need to keep burning if you want to be a part of the decision making process. क्या ये sense बना सकता है? Can we reach that level of
Um,
decentralization?
I think we had reached a similar level of decentralization. Republic also attempted that. So the
Hmm.
treasury had that treasury was
Huh.
of natural resources which the country
Hmm.
had, and that was uske upar hi how do we utilize that natural resources.
Hmm.
That was decided by let's say election, which is basically a delegated form of decision making,
Hmm.
because we delegate the decision making to certain representatives, and
Hmm.
then they choose the leader amongst themselves.
Hmm.
So representatives will decide who will lead them, and so there is a certain degree of delegation, free degree of delegation, which happens from the citizen to the head of the state.
Hmm.
And the treasury was made out of natural resources, and also to utilize those natural resources, people were asked to work on that. Like there is this land, you farm, you grow, or let's say create a factory on that, create soaps, sell it, and give us some money back. So citizens were supposed to utilize those natural resources, and from that, a portion was given as tax, and how that will be spent was decided by the head of the state and the their juniors. So in a third degree, so basically citizens, MLA, chief minister, citizens, MP, prime minister. One side is state and one side is nation, and because we are a federal government, the nation and state both had different budgets and they were doing the same thing. So I think the structure, at least the incentives, is something which we had already reached. Where we fucked up was
The
information.
barrier to entry and
That's one.
information.
Information. I think
Hmm.
the most important part is information asymmetry.
Huh.
Like citizens
Like,
don't know what decision they take is good or bad. They don't
hmm.
have the information to analyze, and even if they get information, there will be another source of misinformation. So there's no authenticity to anything.
Like, this is obviously one point, but even if I get information, for example, I've filed multiple RTIs and I have information of all the illegal real estate projects that were built in Bangalore over lakes.
Okay.
What can I do with this information? First, I can go to the court. I know nothing will happen because those projects still exist. If something would have happened, it would have happened before itself. I'm assuming there are a lot of activists who are already doing this, right?
Yeah.
What I am concerned over here is कि I file an RTR, I pay income tax, I already contribute to the treasury, right? But even after contributing to the treasury, I have no way to enter the decision making process. If I have the desire to make those decisions, everyone doesn't have the desire. But what if I have the desire and I can convince 30 other people who don't have the desire to use their treasury to also be a part of the decision making process? Then why am I not allowed to do that? That is my first question. And in
I
future,
think
can
you're
I do
allowed
that?
to do that. I think you are allowed to
How?
do that. Like you
How?
can always convince people to vote for you.
Hmm.
So you are allowed to participate in an election. You can convince people to vote for you. What you are not allowed to do
Hmm.
is you cannot do it anytime you like. You will
Yeah.
have to wait for the elections to happen.
And election in itself is a very high barrier to entry thing, right? For
So
example,
the epoch is
yeah,
very high right now. The
yes,
5 year epoch.
yeah. And not only that, the expenses that happen in an election, the corrupt politics that you have to do in an election, वो सब काफी high है. And getting a seat in itself is very high barrier to
So the
entry.
cost again, so
Huh.
one is epoch is high, second is the cost to conduct an election is high. So that's another barrier to
Like,
democracy. If we can
I
find some
feel
barriers to democracy.
historically, almost every barrier has been reduced to a negligible amount. For example, if we look at media, वो negligible हो गया अब, the barrier to entry as a
Yeah.
filmmaker, as a news reporter, as a writer, as a director, as a creative person has reduced significantly.
Uh,
Like, first, if you were a creative person, you could be prosecuted by the kings. Now you can just come on YouTube. The max, at max, some company will file a copyright case on you. Nothing else will happen, right? In
to an
excess
extent, to
cases,
an
you'll go
extent.
to jail. But in majority, the barrier to entry has been reduced to zero, right? In democracy, will that barrier to entry tend towards zero, at least tend towards zero? Because I've
It
seen that
should.
barrier to entry rising over time.
So it's rising is like a bit short term. It's rising.
Mhm. Huh.
I think it's just to fail the system which you are having right now. Because the when you talked about the barrier to entry for at least information is going down, but
Hmm.
the processes which we run on, they
Hmm.
don't utilize those mediums. So the barrier to entry is going down on digital medium,
Right.
but our democracy is based on paper-based medium.
Hmm.
So while the barrier to entry has gone down, our democracy is still based on a medieval medium of information flow rather than a fast, more authentic medium of information flow. So unless we shift that, it is difficult to utilize the advancement in technology in actual implementation of democracy because अभी भी like कोर्ट में सारे पेपर्स ही हैं you like it's very difficult to actually file a digital FIR and make it accepted everywhere. Like I've seen shops which will show their certificates on mobile in DigiLocker, and still the person who's coming for inspection will not accept that. Will be like, where's the paper
Yes.
certificate? So
Even with driving license.
DL, right? So it took a lot. We have DigiLocker, but usme bhi like when you show in DigiLocker, technically no one should say that it's not good, but there's a lot of policemen who are like, no,
Yes.
DigiLocker doesn't work, which is
Hmm.
completely crazy.
So, if we kind of look at the challenges to reducing the barrier to entry in democracy, first challenge is uh, that your information is still dependent on paper. So paper has a cost, production cost is there, and taking part in elections has a cost along with that. And one more challenge that I feel is most digital forms of proofs or money
Authenticity. Uh,
authenticity is still not trusted upon. So we don't have a system that's trustworthy, a digital system, because there are multiple ways to forge documents digitally.
हाँ एग्जैक्टली दिस इज
Exactly.
क्रेजी यार मतलब कैश में भी इफ यू वांट टू वेरीफाई कैश तो
Hmm.
मतलब 100% एक्यूरेसी नो वन कैन टेल दे विल बी लाइक हाँ
Yes.
हाँ 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 सही है बट
Hmm.
दे आल्सो नॉट 100% श्योर एंड इन डिजिटल there is no way for me to actually prove my account balance to you.
Yeah.
I can send you a screenshot, but
Huh.
how authentic is that?
But your Bitcoin stored in your wallet is a proof of
Exactly. If I send you my
desktop.
wallet address, I can prove that.
So, parallel to what's happening around us on a day-to-day basis, we have this whole new world that has some sort of infrastructure ready to support a nation that's just digitally democratic instead of being a physical democracy. So, what is that infrastructure, Abhi? Like Bitcoin is one, and उसके अलावा what are the layers to that infrastructure? थोड़ा उस पे
Uh,
discussion करते हैं.
Sure. एक तो information अभी I feel is very critical to democracy because
Yeah.
again like people should know knowledge is so there is two part. One is information and second is consensus, right?
Hmm.
Information is so that people know and consensus is so that people can में
Huh.
the three aspects which is necessary would be one is speed कि how fast can
Hmm.
I make the context reach from my place to your place. Second is authenticity, can you verify that the context is authentic. And third is decay कि जैसे फाइल है
Okay.
ना 100 साल में पेपर वाला फाइल तो खराब हो जाता है या फिर
Hmm.
आग लग गया तो डिस्ट्रॉय हो गया. दैट्स हाउ मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस वैनिश.
Yeah.
अदर स्कैम ऑफिस में आग लग गया, अब नो वन नोज और ऐसा बहुत अच्छा टाइम पे आग लगता है तो पीपल हैव बीन यूजिंग दैट अ लॉट. तो
Huh.
इंफॉर्मेशन का इफ वी नीड टू फिक्स स्पीड ऑथेंटिसिटी एंड डीके.
Hmm.
And the second aspect is consensus. So
Huh.
consensus में cost of consensus should be low because election is what? Election is basically a consensus.
Yes.
5 साल में हम लोग आते हैं consensus establish करते हैं who should lead us, right?
Huh.
And the
Hmm.
cost of election is so high that we cannot ऐसा do it fast. It
Huh.
is very costly. So
Yeah.
consensus में cost is definitely one. The time taken to execute that consensus is also important. कि
Huh.
election
Right.
2 महीना में होगा कि एक दिन में हो सकता है, right?
Yes.
Let me just note it down.
And I
Census.
one more thing, involvement of the bottom.
हाँ, participation. Consensus में actually
Participation.
participation is very important, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
because I guess one of the major concerns of every democracy is that people don't turn up to vote. Especially look at Bangalore, state election, national election, very low turn-ups for
very
voting.
low turn. Yep.
And you have the most educated people in the city. Quite interesting.
अरे ये लोग आ जाएंगे, तुम भाई स्मार्टफोन पे इलेक्शन करा के तो देखो, these are very educated people but they are living in the US or they are going to
Hmm,
Dubai for their work,
hmm,
and you are telling them to fly down and stand in a line to for
hmm,
3 hours to vote
huh,
while they have built systems which can do this remotely.
hmm.
So these are educated people. I think this is why they are not coming.
Okay. तो what are the systems? थोड़ा उस पे बात करते हैं.
तो यहाँ तो I think the conversation is directly going towards crypto now. Because
Where does finance come in all of this, in information and consensus? Where does the entire financial industry, the fiat currency, the currencies, everything, come into democracy?
I think
Because it
दोनों
does
साइड
come
है.
over there.
हाँ
Like,
हाँ, मतलब of course like money तो is important because money is what, it's an account, right?
yeah.
So account is what, account is information.
Huh.
Information of what,
Hmm.
information of, let's say, how things are allocated, information of allocation, and allocation is done by consensus, right?
So money kind of comes somewhere in between bridging information and consensus.
हाँ, it originates from consensus and
Okay.
end up being an information, क्योंकि consensus leads to नहीं, उल्टा जाना is easy. तो money is an account of allocation decided by a consensus.
Account of allocation decided by consensus. And after, so it's like a flywheel. So money is an account of uh, information, of transactions that happened because of consensus, and which again leads to more information. When you abstract historical data of money, of currencies, of flow of capital, it is information again. So it's like information gives money, money gives consensus, consensus कुछ gives money again, and that gives information again.
Yep. I think this is a good enough model, like a money account of allocation decided by a consensus. अभी तो I
Okay.
think this sticks.
Decide. Because मैं इन definitions को अब pull up करूंगा फिर से discussion में.
हाँ, sure.
हाँ, हाँ, हाँ. क्योंकि let's just bring in some original definitions आज के discussion में. ठीक है. तो अब let's jump into the crypto infrastructure that we have for achieving digital democracy.
So consensus तो definitely is where we are already seeing governance. Crypto projects are trying governance, which is based by voting system, which is done by forum pay. You put a proposal, everyone reads the proposal. We
Hmm.
allocate ki, okay, minimum this much percent voters are needed, and then people vote, and then the execution happens. If it's
Hmm.
a smart contract based execution, it happens like that. Or if
Hmm.
3 by 5 multi-sig like wallet holders need to execute that, they will execute. But that consensus which has been achieved is undeniable because
Hmm.
on blockchain we can transparently see how much votes is given to yes and no, and it doesn't take 3 days to count.
What are good examples of it?
um, Abhi, I think DAOs
Com-
are definitely a good example.
Compound is doing really well
हाँ,
for,
compound is good. Jupiter का भी ठीक चल रहा है. There's always a crisis happening there, but
yeah.
it's a proof that they are doing good.
Hmm.
People are fighting. That means they are putting their brains to work.
What about
Yeah,
foundations like
foundations, foundations.
Ethereum Foundation?
Yeah,
And
foundations. अभी भी it's very black box. यार. I
okay.
think every foundation should eventually become a transparent DAO.
Hmm.
It might take some time,
Hmm.
but a lot of foundations right now are operating in a black box model where we
Hmm.
don't know why things are happening, and
Like
well, holders don't have a say in that.
I
Like,
remember one tweet of Devansh, I guess yesterday itself, on this topic of governance itself. Let me just pull up that.
Devans, I want to ask, yeah, as an Ethereum holder, why was I not asked who should be the president of Ethereum Foundation? But Ethereum Foundation again is
Yeah.
a supporting organization because
Yes.
Ethereum is Ethereum. It can have many foundations, right?
Hmm.
So those foundations, it can be private entities.
So
Ethereum
the
cannot.
governance problem in Web3 can be divided into two. One, how do you allocate funding? Second, how do you decide on product changes? So, okay,
Uh,
summed
uh,
up.
huh.
Nation may be similar. How do you allocate capital? And how do you decide on changes of who is doing what? The bureaucratic system, right?
Huh. Huh.
So,
Like penal code, motor vehicle
hmm,
act updation, that is product
yes.
changes. How
Huh.
do you allocate capital is education go 3%, defense go 6%, that thing.
Hmm. Okay. Um, my question again. So we have covered DAOs. We have talked about consensus. Abhi, what is the cost of consensus in crypto? If we have an analysis of it, some graph that I'll
Um,
try to search.
I think both lower. Like let's look at how much. What's the cost of one vote?
Hmm. Huh.
Like vote is also a smart contract, so
Huh.
उसका कोई गैस फी होगा, कुछ आएगा वो $0.1 $0.2 राइट नाउ ऐसा कुछ.
Yeah.
And let's say 1 million people को voting करा है, तो how much is the
Hmm.
cost of consensus? We can always have 1 million multiplied by $0.1, so $100,000 is the cost of
Hmm.
consensus for 1 million people for one round.
Okay. And I
But
guess काफी
that's Ethereum. Solana pay it's very cheap.
हाँ Solana पे it's like 10, not even $10,000, lesser. Yeah.
It could be like couple of $100. That would be the cost of consensus for bringing 1 million together. And Monad pay maybe it will be 1 billion people who we can arrive at a consensus for, let's say, $100.
So I guess ये problem तो solve हो गई है scale की. That a consensus way of approaching problems is not scalable, but now it is.
हाँ, now the how to design ये जो delegated है ना part वो बहुत
Mhm.
important है, because to
Huh.
actually loop in, let's say, 1 billion people, you
Mhm.
need to have a delegated form of decision making, because people don't have one enough time to digest all the information, two
Mhm.
enough processing ability to process all the information, and that's
Mhm.
why they will always delegate decision making to a small group of people, and there will always be a form of election or some form of selection
Mhm.
to decide those group of people. So consensus में एक तो cost of consensus is there, but then again the problem is also about having those delegated group of people who can execute things, because we cannot always like go to a complete consensus for every small decision.
So I guess roll-ups were one way, as far as I remember. Then
Roll ups for consensus, like less
like that,
cost.
it was a delegated way, right, of executing things. Or am I wrong over here?
हाँ, इसमें आई थिंक रोल अप्स नहीं, इट माइट बी delegated तो is okay. Like I think delegated का अभी तक कुछ, there is no product directly
Hmm.
there. हाँ, there is one product which
Hmm.
is called vote markets,
Okay.
where so it's not election, it is direct market, so people
It's
are
like
like,
buying oats.
so I don't have an opinion on this issue. So what I'll do is I will vote for whichever party pays me the most, which is
Okay.
actually how a lot of our democracy also work. In India, we see a lot of news coming in कि this political party is bribing the voters, that political party is bribing the voters, right?
Hmm.
And and that basically means that a lot of people don't have any opinion on where to vote. अब
Hmm.
उनको बस एक मार्केट मैकेनिज्म दे दिया, तो what they do is they will stake their vote in a contract, and people can directly buy their votes from the
Hmm.
contract. So they
Okay.
they don't want participation in decision making, they just want money. So vote market solve for that. So
So
that's earliest delegation right now.
for now, अभी जो consensus mechanism है वो एक quadratic funding model है, right? In most
Quadratic
DAOs.
funding is also in I think a lot of Ethereum DAOs.
हाँ.
There is quadratic funding model. So quadratic funding का the best part is कि like one person who has a lot of control in terms of, let's say, money is not able to have that amount of influence in terms of decision making. So
Yeah.
it's a much softer curve.
Hmm. So, uh, does it kind of make sense to jump to a new model of consensus, or we have arrived at the holy grail of the best consensus
I
model?
don't think we are anywhere near the holy grail of consensus model. Uh,
Is
there
futarchy
is
next?
Futarchy is a good attempt. Quadratic is also a good attempt. Futarchy is
Huh,
also a good attempt. But eventually, how like let's think about how will we know that we have reached a holy grail of consensus model.
huh,
तो वो एक बात चेक करते हैं. Like I
okay.
एक तो civil war नहीं होगा तो I think great democracy, right?
Huh,
So how do we
no civil war.
understand? हाँ, तो we can model it like क्योंकि we can always create data science model of scatter graphs जिसमें कि we will find how much is the disconnect between let's say left and the right. I'll show you just an example of
Hmm,
a scatter plot. um, Scatter plot between Democrats and Republicans ये निकालते हैं, ठीक है.
huh,
uh, 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 okay, so I'll share my screen.
yep.
Mm,
I'll just add it. Yep.
so
Yeah.
अगर इतना ज़्यादा वाइड लाइक लेट्स से दिस सो पूरा ही अलग है दैट दैट मीन्स द सोसाइटी इज हाईली स्प्लिट. तो अब
Yeah.
इसमें एक एस्पेक्ट हुआ हाईली स्प्लिट एंड दूसरा इज हाउ आर दीज पीपल इंटरेक्टिंग विद ईच अदर. लाइक आई थिंक even a high split society is not a problem. The problem is when these people fight and destroy value.
Huh, yes.
तो उसको कैसे मेजर कर सकते हैं? हाउ कैन वी मेजर दैट पीपल आर? तो वो सिंपल है. If positive sum games are happening, then it's good. If negative sum games are happening, then it's bad. How do we measure that? Is again like we need to think about.
To a very large extent, entrepreneurship was a positive sum game.
हाँ हाँ, अरे गुड. हाँ, तो जीडीपी बढ़ रहा है तो पॉजिटिव सम गेम हो रहा है, राइट?
Yeah.
एंड जीडीपी घट रहा है तो नेगेटिव सम गेम हो रहा है. अब
नहीं,
जीडी
let's just have this ना. अगर जीडीपी बढ़ रहा है एंड जीडीपी पर कैपिटा भी सिमिलर लाइंस में बढ़ रहा है, like at a
हाँ
linear, how close it's to a linear relation between GDP growth and GDP per capita growth, that is a very good measure, I feel.
हाँ
Or what we can do is how
इसमें फिर वो भी
linear
जोड़ देते हैं, गिनी इंडेक्स भी जोड़ देते हैं.
how linear is GDP growth, GDP per capita growth, and growth of the bottom 90% income.
हाँ, तो इसको
हाँ,
ठीक है. जस्टिफिकेशन जीडीपी ग्रोथ से पता चल रहा है इकोनॉमी बढ़ रहा है.
yes.
जीडीपी पर कैपिटा से पता चल रहा है इकोनॉमी इज नॉट जस्ट ग्रोइंग बिकॉज ऑफ पॉपुलेशन.
Hmm.
तो दैट गेट्स तो एक एक करके हम लोग एज केसेस रूल आउट कर रहे हैं. तो जीडीपी बढ़ रहा है, ग्रेट. समवन विल कम एंड से कि ब्रो तुम्हारा पॉपुलेशन बढ़ रहा है तो जीडीपी बढ़ रहा है. वी विल लाइक ओके, वी विल गो फॉर जीडीपी पर कैपिटा. फिर कोई आके बोलेगा कि अरे ओनली टॉप 1% आर ग्रोइंग, तो फिर हम लोग गिनी इंडेक्स जोड़ दिए. अब
Yes.
और क्या बोल सकते हैं? वो जो 4 लोग हैं वो और क्या बोलते हैं?
वो 4 लोग और क्या बोलते हैं?
अभी अब इसके बाद व्हाट विल पीपल चैलेंज ऑन? जीडीपी ग्रोथ पर कैपिटा भी देख लिए, गिनी इंडेक्स भी अपना लो है. तो और देन व्हाट कुड गो साउथ? लाइक इज देयर एनी अदर थिंग व्हिच कैन गो साउथ?
How tough it is for a person to start something of their own.
ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस.
Ease of doing business, yes.
बट
For
ईज ऑफ
example,
डूइंग बिजनेस तो आई थिंक जीडीपी ग्रोथ में कैप्चर हो जाना चाहिए.
नहीं, not necessarily. For example, top 10% always start the business compared to bottom.
गिनी इंडेक्स
Like,
में वो कैप्चर हो जाएगा.
okay.
ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस भी रेलेवेंट तो है, बट आई थिंक जीडीपी ग्रोथ में इट गेट्स फेयरली कैप्चर्ड. क्योंकि इन द एंड इट इज लाइक आई थिंक वी आर नॉट कंसर्न्ड अबाउट कि बिजनेस से जीडीपी बढ़ रहा है कि स्टेट ही जीडीपी बढ़ा दे रहा है.
Okay.
Like even if
So,
there is less ease of doing business, GDP might increase, and that will not be a bad thing. That means
okay.
there is a very functional socialist government.
So if we study basically these four indexes properly and take decisions on the basis of them, and consensus also happens on the basis of them, this could be a very good way of giving information first and then
I
having a
think fourth
fair consensus.
fourth index ना, fourth index इसको डालते हैं. Actually there are a couple of more index. I just now thought
Okay. Okay.
happiness index को जोड़ते हैं.
Okay.
क्योंकि
GDP.
फिर लोग आके बोल सकते हैं भाई ठीक है पैसा तो कमा रहे हो but everyone is depressed.
Huh.
तो happiness index I think should not be discarded.
Yes. Because China is not doing good over there. They are
हाँ,
doing good
because in
everywhere.
the end सब कुछ हो गया but happy नहीं है तो फायदा क्या है.
Hmm.
फिर दूसरा आई थिंक एक हेल्थ का भी डालना चाहिए बिकॉज इकोनॉमी इज एज स्ट्रांग एज द पीपल आर. तो
Obesity index. Yeah,
लॉन्जिटिविटी. हाँ,
okay.
लॉन्जिटिविटी तो इन द एंड विल कैप्चर इट्स अ कैच ऑल फॉर ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ हेल्थ बिकॉज ऑब्वियस इट्स ऑब्वियस. हाँ, तो
So
हाँ दो और जोड़ देते हैं हैप्पीनेस
if,
इंडेक्स.
if we have information, this information publicly available for everyone, which it already is.
ऑलरेडी
But
इज वर्ल्ड बैंक साइट पे सारा कुछ डाला हुआ है.
yes, but at the same time, everyone is just educated about it. This is the sort of education that everyone needs to have to take decisions, right?
हाँ,
So information में ये sort हो गया. Once we sort out information, then we can have a better consensus, right? Now, to involve everyone in consensus, we need to have a good consensus model. Quadratic funding, Futarchy, they are good enough. We could have any one of them. Just for the sake of completion, what is Futarchy in very simple terms, just like we explained quadratic funding.
अच्छा तो पहले क्वाड्रेटिक फंडिंग भी एक बार थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन कर देते हैं. आई थिंक इट्स समथिंग व्हिच अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल माइट नॉट नो ऑफ. तो क्वाड्रेटिक फंडिंग इज बेसिकली एवरीवन लेट्स से so voting has a lot of models, right? One person one vote is the kind of model which we follow in our republic, but there is also कि जिसके पास जितना पैसा, how much money you have, that much votes you have. So these are the two extremes of the spectrum. So one side is ki rich and poor have equal votes, and other side is rich and poor have as much votes as rich or poor they have. Quadratic says we will do a square root. So one person one vote model, maybe there is a flaw because not everyone has equal to lose. A poor person, let's say, doesn't have anything to lose, so his decision making might be very detached. तो वो बिना इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोसेस किए वोट मार्केट में अपना डाल देगा वोट और बेच देगा, राइट? तो उसमें वन पर्सन वन वोट में वो वाला फ्लॉ है. लाइक नॉट सेइंग दैट द एंटायर मॉडल इज फ्लॉ बट दिस एस्पेक्ट. नहीं तो फिर अभी लोग गाली देने लगेंगे वन पर्सन वन वोट कैसे खराब है. आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि a rich person is more important than a poor person. I'm just saying that the way they think and the level of involvement they might have in decision making is different. तो उसके कारण one person one vote.
The involvement
has
they
a
might
slight
have
flaw.
in growth is also pretty different. Like, right? Yeah.
Pretty
So
different.
it makes sense.
तो उसके लिए फिर कैपिटलिस्ट डोमेन कैपिटलिस्ट ब्रिगेड बोलता है कि जिसके पास जितना पैसा उसको उतना वोट दे दो. तो उसमें अब फ्लॉ ये है कि इफ 1% पीपल कंट्रोल लेट्स से 60% ऑफ द मनी, तो फिर वो तो खत्म ही हो गया. तो वी नीड टू बैलेंस इट आउट. तो क्वाड्रेटिक सेज कि वी विल डू अ स्क्वायर रूट ऑफ हाउ मच मनी दे हैव एंड उस रेशियो में वोट एलोकेट कर देंगे. तो इफ आई हैव लाइक लेट्स से 10,000 rupees and you have let's say 100 rupees, so you have 10 units of vote and I have 100 units of vote, which is not a big difference compared to earlier. Earlier it was 100x, now it is only 10x. So the inequality gets square rooted down and equality को भी थोड़ा हटा दिए. तो it's a middle path. I think that is the best pitch of quadratic funding. And अभी कितना अच्छा चल रहा है उसका तो I don't have data, but projects have been using it good. Gitcoin I think is one of the best projects doing quadratic funding. और हाँ, so this was about quadratic funding. Now we'll talk about Futarchy. तो फ्यूटार्की बोला कि भाई किसके पास कितना पैसा है छोड़ देते हैं, everyone will be able to bet with how much ever money they have in decision making. And if the decision they take for the outcome they say that the decision will produce happens, then they will get the money of the people betting against them. So it's a it's a market based governance
हाँ,
model rather than voting
हाँ,
based governance model. So quadratic voting is voting based governance
हाँ,
model adjusted for the base of money, but Futarki is pure market based governance model. And I think markets have proved to be great consensus mechanisms. So Futarki
हाँ.
also sounds like it has a great
So,
future.
uh, why I feel Futarki has a great future is कि if we look at money, जो हमारा previous definition था of money, so money came into picture because of information, and then stayed in picture because of consensus, and over time the transactions over there in the financial system became information again, right? So it was like a flywheel that was kicking the importance of money again and again, right? Because the more transactions we have, the more information we are accumulating. तो वो एक flywheel बन गया जिसमें money was important. The markets were important. For example, trade that's happening over the import-export trade, the steel trade, the uh, trade of even groceries, the consumption trade. All of this ended up becoming sorts of information on the basis of which government decides where to allocate, right? So it became a flywheel. If we look at Futarki again, Futarki starts with the importance of having collective decision making, right? So it starts with consensus, but over time, these markets, the historical data from these markets, end up exposing the truth of uh, the entire behavior of who's right, who's wrong, what's wrong, and it kind of will generate a flywheel of giving out more information or that could be used in decision making because at at this
Futarki actually fixes one more thing. Uh, ये एक्चुअली सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट
Mhm.
पार्ट था, आई फॉरगॉट
Mhm.
अबाउट दिस. सो वोटर टर्नआउट इज अ वेरी
हाँ,
डिफिकल्ट थिंग. हाउ डू आई इंसेंटिवाइज
yeah,
पीपल टू एक्चुअली कम एंड वोट? तो क्वाड्रेटिक डजंट फिक्स
yes,
फॉर दैट. वो बस फिक्स करता है कि स्क्यूनेस
Hmm.
जो है वो हो
And
गया. बट इफ देयर इज अ बेटिंग
hmm.
हैपनिंग, तो आई कैन ऑलवेज टेक द राइट डिसीजन एंड मेक मोर मनी, एंड द ओनली इंसेंटिव विच वर्क्स इज
And
मनी. तो वो, हाँ.
Futarki also fixes the flywheel problem. It doesn't reduce the value of elections over time. Because if I look at USA is a developed country. People get educated there, make money, they achieve the American dream. And over time, the importance of vote has diluted because you can achieve the American dream as an individual, right? So the flywheel of decision making, putting importance on the decision making process has kind of reduced. It's like क्यों करना है? I can focus on myself and I can become Elon Musk.
हाँ, let
Yes,
someone else
I can
vote.
become Elon Musk. But Futarki over here uh, puts that flywheel back into the picture. It doesn't let it break. It doesn't let the importance of decision making break. It's like markets. I feel markets are the only way you can not dilute the importance of something. मुझे ऐसा लगता है.
I kind of
Hmm.
agree. I kind of agree. Like flywheel is very
Hmm.
important. Incentives is very
Hmm.
important. क्योंकि वोटिंग करके immediate किसी को कुछ फायदा होगा तो
हाँ,
वोट he will do
yeah.
for sure. But we cannot always speak to the morality of the person to come and vote. If you leave things to morality, it's not going to happen.
Exactly. So अब consensus के बाद what comes next? I guess it's information. Uh, and in terms of information, we have already started moving digital. Like if we look at Elon and Trump doing their entire campaign on Twitter, that is
Yeah.
one way we can see that elections are influenced by social media, by the digital infrastructure. And on the other hand, if we look at Polymarket predicting elections, that's another thing that shows there's a digital shift of elections happening. People are actually putting money where their word is. That's why Polymarket was able to kind of predict the exact outcome of the US elections, because if no one actually put money there, how did they predict it? Right. So I feel digital shift has started to happen. Where's it going to happen next? Apart from social media, apart from prediction markets, where's it happening next? Wo-
I think it's happening both ways. Like market पे तो हो
Huh.
ही रहा है, but government level पे भी हो रहा है, because when we see things like let's say DG
Hmm.
Locker, DG
Hmm.
Yatra, all of that, वो भी is a part of digital democracy. Anywhere where
Hmm.
information gets on digital rail, authenticity happens
Hmm.
digitally, and the decay is minimized because things have become digital, is a path कि information को, so message is the medium, right? तो medium को digital पे shift करना
So
is a challenge. अब Polymarket एक side कर रहा है, which is the town hall
yeah.
side of things. So whatever is happening on X or Polymarket are the things which happens in a town hall of any society. जैसे Age of
It's
Empires
like
खेलेंगे तो
what
town hall
happens
है.
in the parliament, the discussion forum.
हाँ, एग्जैक्टली तो वो टाउन हॉल है, तो टाउन हॉल का एक पार्ट वो हो गया, दूसरा पार्ट है अखबार, न्यूज़पेपर. So newspaper is has been replaced by social media now, but the concept of every civilization needing a town hall stays. ब्रॉन्ज एज में भी टाउन हॉल होता था और अभी भी टाउन हॉल है. तो नाउ सोशल मीडिया इज द टाउन हॉल, बट पार्लियामेंट इज स्टिल हैपनिंग समवेयर एल्स. तो टाउन हॉल से पार्लियामेंट को वी नीड टू कनेक्ट. We also need to, so parliament is parliament and executionary and
Hmm.
everything. तो आई फील डीजे यात्रा बहुत अच्छा था,
Hmm.
क्योंकि नो मोर यू हैव टू ऐसा एक पेपर
Yes.
टिकट लेके सब जगह यू नीड टू वेरीफाई स्टैम्प
Hmm.
ऑल ऑफ दैट. तो वो खत्म हुआ, इट हैज कम ऑन डिजिटल
Uh,
रेल्स. डिजी लॉकर, योर आईडी इज कमिंग ऑन डिजिटल रेल्स. तो इंफॉर्मेशन को डिजिटल रेल्स पे लाना
hmm.
है इज वन पार्ट, और उसके बाद कंसेंसस को डिजिटल रेल्स पे लाना है, और टाउन हॉल को डिजिटल रेल्स पे लाना है. इसमें तीनों चीज का
I
आई
feel
थिंक ऑल थ्री ऑफ दीज टेक्नोलॉजी
talking
इज
about
रेडी.
authenticity in terms of information on digital rails, it's pretty much authentic, right? We can kind of certification, the unique numbers, the unique hashes. For example, if we look at the COVID certificate, that had a unique number given to every Indian, right?
बट एवरीवन वाज फेकिंग इट.
And everyone was fake. That's interesting.
हाँ,
So,
क्योंकि बिकॉज था,
huh,
ऑथेंटिसिटी था, बट वेरीफाइबिलिटी वाज
okay.
नॉट व्हाट
So,
पीपल एक्चुअली
how do you
यूटिलाइज्ड.
make information on digital rails authentic and verifiable? Do we have any solution to offer at present?
Yeah, technology is there. I think awareness is where people are
Which tech,
lacking. Jैसे
for
why was
example?
everyone uh, um, zero knowledge proof is a good tech
ZK.
for privacy,
Yeah.
ZK, for privacy protection and still having verifiability. Blockchain is
Hmm.
great. Everything happens in public. Even the normal internet is great, but उसमें like X का community notes, that is a good
Hmm.
example, where if someone shares a misinformation, वो आ
Hmm.
जाएगा. Dislike button was also very good, but so sad that YouTube decided to remove the counter. So because people need to
Yeah.
express, so people can express whatever they want, but people should also be allowed to call them out. So there's a lot of platforms where people are not allowed to call anyone out. जिसको जो बोलना है बोलने दो. जैसे Instagram पे देखोगे, everyone can speak whatever they want, even on YouTube
Instagram
for this matter,
comments
right?
are the best source of entertainment.
Yeah, YouTube पे भी like people make
Yes.
any video. ऐसे ही कोई random आदमी sits on a podcast. I saw this person was flying
Hmm.
somewhere and all of that. कुछ भी बोल देगा. There's a lot of people who will dislike the video, but dislike दिखेगा नहीं किसी को how many people have disliked the video, and because people are watching it, YouTube keeps
Two
promoting
random
it.
people trying
So
to come up with a solid infra for next new age democracy. That's allowed.
हाँ, that's allowed. अब किसी को अच्छा नहीं लगा
Huh.
तो what can they do?
They can comment. Just
डिसलाइक
comment.
करेंगे. किसी को दिखेगा नहीं कि कितने लोग
Huh.
डिसलाइक किए हैं. कमेंट में करेंगे, कमेंट तो हम लोग एज द पीपल हु आर हैविंग द चैनल डिलीट कर सकते हैं. आई एम नॉट श्योर. वी शुड बी एबल टू डिलीट द
या
कमेंट्स,
मैं
राइट?
डिलीट कर सकता हूँ कुछ भी.
डिलीट कर सकते हैं ना. हाँ, तो कोई नेगेटिव कमेंट डालेगा अपन डिलीट कर देंगे. तो देयर इज नो वे फॉर पीपल टू एक्चुअली कॉल अस
या.
आउट, राइट? एंड दिस इज वेरी बैड. एक्स पे व्हाट आई लाइक इज कम्युनिटी
हाँ.
नोट्स. कोई भी अगर कुछ बोला, इफ समथिंग
Yes.
इज रॉन्ग, दे कैन कॉल देम आउट. तो दिस इज वन एस्पेक्ट. तो देयर आर थ्री एस्पेक्ट्स ना, वी जस्ट वी डिस्कस्ड कि एक इज
Information.
कम्युनिटी
हाँ.
नोट्स. हाँ.
Community notes.
uh,
Dislike.
दूसरा था
Hmm.
डिसलाइक बटन, where I can show that I hate this. और एक और क्या
Comments.
था? uh, हाँ, comments. हाँ, permanent comments. Like community notes is
Yes.
kind of that only, but packaged as a
Hmm.
different product. ठीक है, तो दो चीज तो है ही. You can express fact by community notes and dislike button just to show that you
Hmm.
hate this. तो टाउन हॉल में ये वाला
एक
चीज है जो अभी
तीसरी चीज
चाहिए.
वो हो गई पॉली मार्केट हो गया. इट्स अ वे ऑफ कमिंग टू अ ट्रुथ itself.
हाँ, सो पॉली मार्केट थोड़ा लिमिटेड फंक्शनैलिटी है, बिकॉज इट कैन नॉट बी मेड ऑन एवरी
या.
पोस्ट आउट देयर. तो जो मोर इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग्स है उस पे पॉली मार्केट चला जाएगा. जो लेस इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग्स है, लेट्स से कम्युनिटी नोट्स में कुछ हो गया एंड इट्स सब्जेक्टिव and people are like fighting कि नहीं community notes is wrong, then we will go to
Yes.
poly market कि चलो ठीक है, we will create a poly market on this and let the people decide
तो आई
what is
गेस
the
वो
truth.
थर्ड चीज हो गई, राइट?
Could be, yeah.
हाँ. ओके.
अभी तो I think let's document everything.
ओके.
तो पॉली मार्केट भी इंफॉर्मेशन वेरिफाइबिलिटी में काफी काम आएगा, बिकॉज न्यूज को तो पॉली मार्केट हैज ऑलरेडी beaten. Things are known much faster on poly market than they are known in media headlines.
Okay. So and it's like Polymarket incentivizes everyone to be a journalist as well. If there's some poll that's happening over there, I would go end up reading about
हाँ,
it, researching about it, and putting a bet on it because I have a upside.
and then
I
I
have a
will agree.
upside on researching about it and then putting out the right
Yeah.
thing according to me, right? So I feel
You can always, it's like activist short
yes,
selling.
huh,
I think Bill
yes,
Ackman, everyone can be Bill Ackman.
exactly. And everyone can be some sort of a journalist also if we kind of extend upon the poly market model. You can for example, Dhruv Rathi today, let's just take Dhruv Rathi's example. He comes up with a bunch of
हाँ,
papers, a bunch of information, creates a video on it. For example, there's someone else who's like, ठीक है, daily poly market पे these are the top 5 discussions that are happening in this genre. I just know about this genre. This is where I study. He comes up with a lot of papers on those discussions, creates a video, and he probably has a average reach of 1 lakh people, and somehow those 1 lakh people think that he's making sense. So now you are incentivized to be a journalist from day one. You're incentivized to make
yeah.
sense, you're incentivized to put things out there, and you're so it's a very interesting model. I know a lot of people can manipulate through this, but those people will be
हाँ,
called out.
इसमें it fixes very nice. अब journalist का the biggest problem is whoever pays journalist has to be loyal to that
Exactly.
person, right? So if he is earning directly
Hmm.
from the market, then he will have the loyalty to
Yes.
truth.
So I feel uh
जैसे ध्रुव
huh,
राठी को अभी कांग्रेस might be paying. That's there's an
I feel
speculation. So
journalism or all the media houses should be structured in a more individual centric journalism when it comes to the day to day news. When it comes to war crimes, when it comes to uh, probably accidents, natural calamities, that's where I feel it should be more centralized because these are issues that can kind of hurt sentiments at points, protests, if you.
तो इसको वैसे कर सकते हैं ना. So government will let you know of all of these things, and if government is lying, then the journalist will use the markets to publish the facts.
Exactly. Matlab, you don't need a central authority in journalism, and journalism is a important
हाँ,
picture when it comes into democracy, when we talk about democracy, right?
True. हाँ, डेमोक्रेसी तो
4
आप
pillars
पूरा
होते हैं,
द मीडिया एस्पेक्ट.
parliament, judiciary, journal.
एक्चुअली पता है, आई वाज रीडिंग
हाँ,
समडे, आई थिंक इंडिया में भी रीड 4
हाँ.
पिलर्स. बाकी देयर आर 7 पिलर्स टू जर्नलिज्म एज
Oh
वेल.
wow.
लेट मी चेक वो 7 पिलर्स क्या थे.
What were the 4 pillars of democracy? एक बार मैं वो सर्च करता हूँ.
लेजिस्लेचर,
Legislature,
एग्जीक्यूटिव,
yes.
जुडिशियल,
मैंने
मीडिया.
पार्लियामेंट बोल दिया, लेजिस्लेचर और एग्जीक्यूटिव. ठीक है. हम्म.
बट ठीक है, मतलब आई थिंक 4 पिलर्स मॉडल इज गुड. अच्छा, थ्योरी ऑफ चेंज में 7 पिलर्स ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी है. Rule of law, right to be, right to express, right to organize, right to choose, right
हम्म.
to be chosen, effective government. अच्छा, तो दिस इज मोर पर्पस फंक्शन ये है. और स्ट्रक्चर इज 4 पिलर्स. तो ठीक है, 4 पिलर्स पे अगर स्टिक करें, एंड इफ यू वांट टू सी हाउ, लेट्स से क्रिप्टो इज क्रिएटिंग ऑल द 4 पिलर्स. जैसे डिजिटल, व्हाट इज क्रिप्टो? नथिंग, डिजिटल, राइट? तो डिजिटल डेमोक्रेसी में ये 4 पिलर्स जो है वो क्या हो
Yes.
सकते हैं? आई थिंक सबसे पहले तो जब पिलर विच वाज फॉर्म्ड वाज स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स. So that smart contract is what? It's
Yes.
executive, because smart contract is basically if this then that. तो executive में वही लिखा रहता है, if this then that, which is basically what your constitution, what your penal codes, and all of the supporting documents around that, acts, bills, everything means. उसमें वही रहता है कि if this then that. So that is smart contract. Then we come to, let's say, मीडिया. तो मीडिया में टाउन हॉल इज देयर.
मीडिया तो हमने
सोशल
पूरा
मीडिया,
डिस्कस किया है अभी.
हाँ एग्जैक्टली. तो वो पूरा पॉली मार्केट, एक्स, सोशल मीडिया प्लस प्रेडिक्शन मार्केट्स, आई थिंक इज अ गुड कवर फॉर मीडिया. कमिंग टू जुडिशरी, तो अब जुडिशरी बोलता है कि यू गाइस कमिट टू समथिंग, एंड इफ यू आर स्वेइंग अवे फ्रॉम दैट यू विल बी पनिश्ड. तो ये
Again?
चीज एवीएस इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहा है. हाँ, आइगेन, सिम्बायोटिक,
Yes.
कड़क. सो सेल्फ कमिटमेंट्स एंड स्लैशिंग. तो कोड वही बोल, तो दे आर लाइक द डिजिटल कोड्स.
Okay.
तो वहाँ पे जुडिशरी
जुडिशरी में we haven't seen adoption. बिल्कुल भी. What?
स्लैशिंग तो अभी लाइव गया है 2
Yes.
वीक पहले.
Let's see how it goes.
तो हाँ, मतलब आई विल बिलीव, I will need to see that slashing works to actually understand that quote works. From theory, it looks like
Yes.
a quote, but when I see that slashing is actually a good enough incentive for people to not do scams, do frauds, then it will have a proof
Yes.
of work that it's working. तो executive हो गया, judiciary हो गया, we have media
Media
also.
also.
Now what is left?
Legislature.
Legislative. Legislative का काम क्या है? Rules बनाना and all of that, which is DAOs, but that is far from a smooth functioning
Yes.
system.
DAOs have promised a lot, and we talk a lot about DAOs since the inception. I guess since 2019, that's when I've been reading about stuff and following stuff. Since then, we have talked a lot about DAOs. A lot of DAOs have sprung up, but none of the DAOs are transparent with everything they are doing. And decision making always lies in hands of an internal cabal. And uh, some amount of decision making and allocation of funds still is in a black box model. So there's not enough information that's being pushed out to the DAO members as well. These are some major concerns with what's happening in DAOs. Can slashing mechanism in DAOs, in the operations of DAOs, be a good incentive for people to run DAOs in future?
I think Futarki is
Good
good.
enough.
Because losing a bet is slashing,
Yes.
right?
So Futarki is a good way to slash when it comes to decision making in DAOs. Okay. So we have in bits and bytes, we have the puzzle kind of forming up.
अब किसी को एक preamble
हाँ,
लिखना होगा
एक
यार.
preamble लिखना होगा.
Someone needs to write a digital
So,
preamble, digital democracy का
What
preamble.
someone needs to really do is, जो मुझे लगता है, at a very small scale, what Balaji says, try to build a nation. at a very small scale
Networks.
network state where you have some amount of physical spaces, you have a few people,
Mhm.
and you're trying to kind of replicate these four pillars. So we do have physical space, we have zoo house. So uh, we have things in bits and pieces. Not only zoo house, we have multiple physical spaces. We have hashed house, we have reclaim house in Bangalore itself. These are the, yes, Atlantis
Atlantis,
Tower.
yeah.
So what we can do is try to run an experiment at a small scale and prove people that we can create a democratic state out of this.
Huh.
So no one is actually an
Yep.
owner over here until you have a democratic way to select ownership. It's like, huh.
True. And there is some natural resource which is in that
So
state and that is producing, and people are happy
so
with that. The
what if I take
allocation.
a small ecosystem that has been responsible for a lot of innovation in India, which is the IIT ecosystem, and I
Mhm.
try to run a very good experiment where I am trying to democratize this innovation to the entire ecosystem and everyone who's funding this ecosystem. I'm trying to make
Yeah,
it
it looks
democratic.
good.
Like, ये idea
Yeah.
मुझे अभी आया है. So
It's
if I write a preamble for innovation happening in this ecosystem and show the world that this is possible, is,
हाँ, you will need a
हाँ,
preamble, you will need a constitution. तो basically एक मैग्ना कार्टा
हम्म,
लिखना है. उसमें एक preamble होगा because not everyone will read the
हम्म,
magna carta, they will read the
हम्म,
preamble. तो preamble is just a spirit, वो आ गया. Then you have resources, which is the initial, let's say, starting fund for
हम्म.
IT.fund, and those resources will be allocated to people, and then people need to utilize those allocation to produce things, and that production which is happening should have a decent allocation back to the people so that people are happy.
So
And if that is achieved, I think we have a functioning
I
network
feel
state.
this is one way to actually promote digital democracy at a very in a very legitimate and state friendly manner. You're not challenging
हाँ,
anyone, you're not challenging the systems ki इन्हें हटा दो, पूरा हटा दो, गवर्नमेंट को हटा दो, बैंक को हटा दो, because that's not practical. What will you run the whole country on,
हाँ,
right?
exactly,
uh,
exactly. Wait,
हाँ,
in fact, government
हाँ,
is trying to do digital
मैं,
democracy. They are
हाँ,
making things, Digi
मैंने
Yatra,
बैंक हटा दिया. अब
DigiLocker.
मैं कैसे कर रहा हूँ ट्रांजैक्शन, और अब सारे बिजनेसेस कैसे ऑपरेट कर रहे हैं, right? So we cannot do that. But what if we, in parallel, try to do this in niche baskets, niche buckets, and just make
हाँ.
the niches democratic and then combine all the niches together? ऐसा कुछ.
And then looking at that proof that this thing works, government can start adopting things, because that's basically what happened with
Yeah.
blockchain as well. They were like, no, no, this shit bad. Then they were like, oh, this shit actually works. Then they were like, okay, let's put our
And
tickets there. Then they were like, let's put our IDs
and
there.
we can see that happening now. Stripe payments के लिए they have acquired
Huh,
so much.
let's put our
Yeah.
payments there. That happened.
Shopify.
And this actually happened
Yes.
earlier also. When stock market came, every bank was like, this thing shit.
Exactly.
And then now you see every bank has a trading desk.
And after that, you have a lot of examples actually this year. Settling happening on chain in Robinhood. All the settling is being
हाँ,
done.
हाँ, XRP is doing Swift को replace कर रहा है. So international transactions, like governments are settling their transactions on blockchain. So I don't blame them completely for being slow, because if you are running a system on which, let's say, billions of people are depending, you don't want to fuck up there just to run an experiment, and a lot of things can go south. So that's a responsibility of uh, the government. Like an elephant cannot run
Mhm.
fast.
Exactly. So uh,
बट इंटरेस्टिंग, आई थिंक काफी
हाँ,
डायरेक्शन मिला आज के
like
कन्वर्सेशन से.
मुझे पर्सनली
Uh,
काफी डायरेक्शन मिला, बिकॉज मैं डॉक्स नहीं लिख पा रहा अभी IIT.fun के. क्या डॉक्स में लिखूं, like.
अरे यू आर व्हाट यू आर राइटिंग इज मैग्ना कार्टा.
So you have seen like the brief docs, but I cannot put them public because I haven't connected the entire ecosystem in those docs itself. Like, if I cannot connect it in my
Mhm.
head and if I cannot put it out, then how can I execute it? That's the point. uh
True,
so
true. I think doc writing is very
I
difficult. Like if you are actually writing a
think,
DAO documentation, it's very
like,
difficult. Like it might with 5 pages, very
a
difficult.
lot we have discussed today is, I feel, a parallel to network state, but with our own taste to it, with the Indian taste to it, I feel.
हाँ.
And
And Indians are good at
yeah.
democracy. I think जो भी crack
Hmm.
करेगा will either be a French citizen or an Indian
Yeah.
citizen, because in the world there are only two people who are great at making democracies work.
Hmm. So अब नेक्स्ट कुछ बचा है क्या? मेरे हिसाब से we
I
we
think
have talked
fair cover.
about
Like I have a
what exactly a democracy has: information consensus. We have talked about the most relevant information that talks about how democratic the country is and how democratic the growth happening in the country is, how happy the people are. We
uh
have talked about how can we measure a positive sum game and a negative sum game. Uh, we have talked
uh
about where money comes in information and consensus and how it creates a flywheel. Then we have talked about the most democratic ways of doing consensus that are available today, and where we talked about quadratic funding and futarchy. On the same time, we have also kind of talked about the example of Switzerland, the Nordic countries, and USA, how important education is in democracy. We have talked
then we also covered the
four pillars of
pillars.
democracy. They're parallels in the crypto world. I guess that was one of the most important thing that we have covered, and I'll probably write a good piece on that from today's discussion. And we have also covered how we can start implementing these on in niche ecosystems. So we can kind of actually, at the end of the day, if we implement this in multiple niche ecosystems, we could at least connect them and uh, have a significant impact towards making the country more democratic, instead of just ruining the operations and trying to fight our way out by uh, bringing in a civil war. Because I feel if when we yeah,
Anarchy is not good
because
enough.
I feel when we kind of break the current systems to implement a new system, we have a short span of civil war happening. Instead, we just
Yeah.
have a parallel system set up and then have people slowly switch to it, just like what happened with payments. So we need to have a
Hmm.
parallel to what happened with payments. So what's happening in payments? We are trying to remove Visa, the monopoly of banks, Visa, Mastercard in payments, right? We need to have the
Hmm.
same story play out in governance. We cannot directly
हाँ.
replace stuff. It's people
Yeah.
shift.
Like least damage in
Yes, least
migrating.
damage in migrating. So I guess this is a good note to end. Anything else that I have missed out in this summary?
um, yeah, I think perfect summary. Uh, the next steps is just to nice. You
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty
Yes.
good. So it's a good start because I've been thinking about digital democracy since a long time, but I think it's a good time that we actually start
Hmm.
documenting things, try to create something like a preamble, something like Constitution, Magna
You have
Carta. We run a couple of small
you have an
experiments.
entire experimental project with you. Be free. Be
Uh,
free to experiment anything. I am ready for all of it.
then we will write the docs
Yes.
together. It will be very just and very competitive. So basically, what it will achieve is GDP growth per
Mhm.
capita, Gini index will be low, happiness index will be high, and longevity will
Yes.
be high.
Everyone should be
This is
happy.
the target we
Everyone
want
should
to
be
achieve.
smiling,
Yeah.
at least in that
Yep.
ecosystem. So I guess, yeah, this is where we end. Pretty comprehensive.
Huh.
Must laga. So
We will do it again, like maybe in a couple
yes.
of months, back from the
Huh.
learnings we are
So
having from what we're
in a
discussing
couple
around
of
something
months, we'll
implementing.
have one more stream where we sit with what we have learned from this. and build over it कि इसके ऊपर क्या सोचा है हमने, right?
And we'll also try to bring someone who is running a network state,
We'll,
right?
we'll
We have a
yeah,
couple of
we have
people,
a
right?
couple of people. Let's not just take names. We'll bring them. We'll try to tell
Uh,
them that this is what we want to talk about next, and let's just do it. Okay, guys. I
done, done.
guess
Awesome.
that's where we end today's live. Uh, today's live stream honestly was boring for the masses, क्योंकि we had everyone leave us. Abhi, there's only one person
हाँ,
watching. So yeah,
वो तो मंडे नाइट
ending
का
it.
भी
Yes.
दिस इज